Welcome to the Rough Terrain Forklift Safety course about readiness, preparing yourself, preparing equipment, and devising plans to avoid site hazards. Rough terrain forklifts are designed for various types of rough terrain. They are complex machines that require careful preparation to ensure worksite safety. By the end of the course, you will be able to recognize rough terrain forklifts and their parts. Ensure that an operator is ready to operate a rough terrain forklift. Evaluate and prepare an area for rough terrain forklift operation. Know what's included in visual and operational inspections of rough terrain forklifts, and use a load capacity chart. Which of these is a rough terrain forklift? It's okay if you aren't sure. We'll explain the answer. Select the labels on the diagram to learn more about rough terrain forklift features. One more thing we want to note about rough terrain forklifts is their steering. They have more varieties than typical smooth surface forklifts or other vehicles. Some rough terrain lifts have multiple steering modes. Rough terrain lifts operate differently than standard forklifts and other industrial trucks. It's important that operators experience equipment operation in person. Many regulators require hands-on training, in addition to an overview such as the one you are receiving in this online course. During your hands-on training, you'll learn about the equipment operating controls, labels, warnings, and equipment capabilities and limitations of the rough terrain forklift you will use. Always keep copies of the owner or operator manual and industry safety standards with the forklift. Some locations, such as the United States, require this by law. Become familiar with these materials prior to operating the equipment. You will also learn about job site hazards. Rough terrain forklift operators must be rested and alert so that they may safely operate the equipment. Never operate equipment if you are excessively fatigued or impaired by substances such as medicine, alcohol, or drugs. Remember that some over-the-counter medications can cause drowsiness. Check the label for warnings before taking medicine before or during work hours. True or false? After you take this course, you'll be ready to use rough terrain forklifts at work. Before you operate rough terrain forklifts, it's important to survey the area and identify, mark, and address potential hazards. Select each site condition to learn more about its hazards. Gusty or sustained winds may create a tipping hazard. The wind may also cause load swing and dangerous side loads. Suspend lifting operations when wind speeds exceed 24 kilometers per hour, 15 miles per hour, or 13 knots. Wet, dark, or foggy conditions reduce visibility, which increases the risk of collisions. In these conditions, operate at slow speeds or suspend operations. Avoid collisions with pedestrians and vehicles by planning lifts during low traffic periods, barricading lifting areas, and assigning signalers as necessary. Use equipment that is specially approved for flammable or combustible atmospheres to avoid sparks from the electrical system and heat from engine exhaust that can cause an explosion. In enclosed areas, carbon monoxide poisoning can result from a buildup of exhaust fumes. Ensure adequate ventilation and avoid idling the engine in enclosed areas. Work with your supervisor or safety professionals to develop critical lift plans if you cannot resolve hazards or you have other serious concerns. These concerns may include that the combined weight of the lift and the load is close to the driving surface capacity, the weight of the load is close to the maximum capacity of the lift, or that you will be handling or near costly or sensitive equipment during the lift operation. As you prepare to use a rough terrain forklift, you note that there are some wind gusts happening sporadically. You check the weather and see that you can expect gusts of 40 kilometers per hour, 25 miles per hour, or 21 knots over the next few hours. What should you do? Inspect rough terrain forklifts at least once on each day they are in use. Follow your company's procedures for inspecting equipment. Use any checklist they provide to document your inspections. If you find problems, you need to follow your company's procedures for removing equipment from service and report the inspection failure immediately. Begin by looking at the rough terrain forklift. Do you see any damage, leaks, or loose or missing parts? Be sure to look for cracked or bent forks, illegible load charts or labels, and improper tire condition or inflation. If a rough terrain forklift passes visual inspection, you may proceed to an operational inspection, which you must perform slowly on firm, level ground in an area free of hazards. Check the horn, backup alarm, mirrors, and lights. Test the lift and tilt systems, including load engaging operations. Look at the boom angle and chassis level indicators to ensure they are working properly. Use the brakes and steering to make sure they work as expected. Where should rough terrain forklift operators perform an operational inspection? The load capacity is the amount of weight that the equipment can lift safely when it is on firm ground with the frame level. The forks are positioned evenly on the carriage. The load is centered on the forks. The tires are properly sized and inflated, and the lift is in good operating condition. The rough terrain lift may tip if it is deficient in any of these aspects. Overloading or exceeding the load capacity is also a common cause of tipovers. Load capacity charts help you determine if you can safely lift a load. Each chart looks different, but they all contain some basic information. Select each section of the sample load capacity chart for a brief description. You must select them all before you may proceed. To use a load capacity chart, first determine the weight of the load you plan to lift. For this example, let's say our load will be 3,175 kilograms, or 7,000 pounds. Next, determine the location at which you want to place the load. Use the y-axis to find the height at which you will place the load. For this example, let's say we want to extend the boom to 11.5 meters, or 38 feet. Now, use the x-axis to find the distance from the front tires to where you will place the load. Let's say we want the load center to be 4.2 meters, or 14 feet, from the front wheel in our example. Now, we can find the point at which the two numbers meet. When you find the point at which the height and distance meet, look for the number in the load zone arc. That is the load capacity. Here we can see that our example gives us 2,722 kilograms, or 6,000 pounds as the load capacity. Remember that we wanted to lift a load of 3,175 kilograms, or 7,000 pounds. We can see from the chart that this is above the equipment's capacity. To lift safely, we need the point on the chart to fall into a zone that is greater than or equal to the weight of our load, so we must make some adjustments to lift safely. For example, we could lighten the load or lift it closer to the equipment. The load capacity chart helps prevent us from causing a dangerous tip-over. If a point ever falls on the line between two load zones, use the lighter weight limit for safety. Now it's your turn to practice using a load capacity chart. Using the sample chart and information you see here, is it safe to lift this load? Is this load safe to lift? Let's try one more. Is it safe to lift this load? You should now be able to recognize rough terrain forklifts and their parts, ensure that an operator is ready to operate a rough terrain forklift, evaluate and prepare an area for rough terrain forklift operation, know what is included in visual and operational inspections of rough terrain forklifts, and use a load capacity chart.